Welcome to Unraveled Season 2. You can tell it's a new season because I've grown a mustache and cut my hair. Oh, I'm obviously just kidding. These are both fake. I know how much it would disappoint my friends if I changed my appearance. I'm just kidding again. I'm not your friend, and you have no say over what I do with my body. And speaking of harsh realities, the world of Dark Souls is frightening and murky. How can you truly understand Dark Souls lore without living Dark Souls, grinding away tirelessly in inhospitable environments under uncharitable overlords? To truly understand Dark Souls lore, you must first understand the desolation of working at a job. Have you ever thought about the term boss in a video game before? Those terrible enemies have the same title as the people you'll be working for the rest of your life. What a silly coincidence! Dark Souls is known for wildly difficult bosses that prove themselves on the battlefield. But can they prove themselves in a more difficult setting? The Lordran Hills Business Park and Commerce Center. It's across from the mall. Today, I'm ranking every Dark Souls boss based on how good they'd be as a manager. I'm not dancing this season. Welcome to the Dark Souls Corp onboarding seminar. Now, I'm only going to be speaking about the Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 bosses, no other Soulsborne games. I was originally thinking about putting in the Demon Souls, but they actually got integrated into the Dark Corporation in a very messy merger. All of the managers got sacked, so we're not talking about them. That leaves us with 96 Dark Souls bosses and mini-bosses, and it leads us to the difficult part of our journey. How do we objectively answer the subjective question, what makes a good boss? So I started researching the X qualities of a good boss on places like LinkedIn and Forbes, and then I fell down the rabbit hole of the hundreds of corporate blogs. And at the end of this journey, I realized it didn't matter at all. What does matter is making a catchy, PowerPointable mnemonic device. So here are the 5 C's that make a good boss. Number 1, clear vision. Can this boss communicate their goals? Give clear steps on how to achieve those goals. Does this boss clearly hold their big old arm way up in the air before slamming it down on you? Number 2, consistent feedback. It's important for a boss to let you know that you've made a mistake, like challenging Seath the Scaleless before putting on your Ring of Sacrifice, you absolute fool, you child. Number 3, cherishes employees. A good boss values employee perspectives and rewards good performance, like when a boss decides to die when you hit it in a good way. Number 4, compassionate leadership. Honest, trusting, worthy of respect from their employees. The kind of boss you could chat with at the Estes cooler. And the 5th and final C can really just go to town on a motherfucker. Slices, dices, big old crunchers! Someone who is willing to do what needs to be done when the going gets tough. Or someone who reveals an abyssal dragon that they've been keeping under their armor this whole time. This is our main criteria for what makes a good boss, but for 96 bosses, it's gonna be hard to differentiate their management style with just these 5 C's. Which is why I'm introducing the HR index. If they're over here, they get a lot of HR compliments. If they're down here, they get a lot of HR complaints. Let's be honest. Some really well-loved bosses are very bad leaders, and some really good leaders are skeezy as hell. So let's rank some Dark Souls bosses! Here's our scale. We're gonna start out with the neutrals. They're the standard boss, so I'm just gonna skim through them. Guardian Dragon. The Pursuer. Old Demon King.
of Song.
If you're watching this video and you see yourself exhibiting these lackluster tendencies, I want you to ask yourself, what can I do to be better than the Royal Rat Authority, who vomits acid all over the floor multiple times a day and is still considered a pretty okay boss? Aim higher. Let's talk about the Pushovers. Now, these are like my favorite substitute teacher in high school, Mr. S, who would go off on class-long tangents about his youth traveling the world instead of teaching us about Lord of the Flies. I loved Mr. S. Objectively a terrible teacher, though. Champions Gravetender and Gravetender Greatwolf. This guy's so fun. He brought his dog into work. I love dogs. Literally nothing's gonna get done today. Vort of the Boreal Valley. He runs around on all 4s. He's really disrupting the walking space. It's very ineffective. Iron Golem. He's sweet, sort of bumbling, and you've asked him to approve your expense reports like 5 times already. Ava, Lud, and Zalin, the king's pets. Literally baked into the title, they're teachers' pets. They suck up to the king. Seath the Scaleless is a real sweetheart, but he is very risk-averse, and if you destroy his crystal, he becomes mortal and takes it, like, really personally. The Fume Knight, he's got 2 sides, 2 swords. Look, he's still got his old sword back when he had your job, but eventually he is gonna get rid of that sword. He's gonna be a real asshole about it. The Lost Sinner, she, and I quote, eternally punishes herself for the sins of her past. It's important to have a boss that recognizes their flaws, but it's bad if your boss locks herself in the conference room and flogs herself eternally. I booked the conference room for 3. I need to get in there. Crossbreed Priscilla goes invisible at the first sign of conflict. That's not showing up for the company. Lorien and Lothric, the princes, one of them hangs around the neck of the other one who's actually doing all the work, which is the worst form of micromanaging. The 4 kings. You don't fight all 4 at once, you fight 1 and then the rest come in slowly, which is kind of like every group project you had in high school. The Karthus Sandworm. If you ignore them, they'll ignore you. And some people like that managing style. But also if you stand on the sideline for long enough, someone else will shoot big arrows into them and then they'll die. And that's a bad boss. The Dragon Slayer armor is actually just a puppet for these big, wiry dragon butterfly things. So they're well loved by the higher ups, but only because they don't have any ideas on their own. The Ancient Wyvern is the epitome of pushover because you can just run through his stage and then kill him with 1 attack at the very end. This is perfect for the employee that likes to, you know, fuck around on Reddit all day and then send 1 email at 5 and then peace out. I don't know what that's like. I've never done that. And finally, this is sort of a technical pushover. It's the Ruin Sentinels. They're kind of like a board of directors in that they all look the same and do the same thing, which is to say not a lot, but you gotta suck up to them if you want to get anywhere in the company. Now we're gonna flip to the opposite side of the scale. We're gonna talk about the Sketchies. These have a powerful understanding of corporate leadership, but everyone hates them. The Boreal Outrider Knight is a mini-boss, but like you can tell he really wants to be a boss. Nashandra tricks you into opening the Throne of Want, even though she just wants it for herself, but manipulation gets you pretty far in business. The Burnt Ivory King only comes to fight you after you kill literally all of his knights. He gets it done, sure, but only when he needs to. Dragon Rider. This dude doesn't have a dragon. His job title is obviously false. It's like if I got promoted to guy who had an okay time in high school. Bed of Chaos. Actually a very effective leader, but every time you have to have a meeting with the Bed of Chaos, someone in HR gets an email. Centipede Demon. He nasty. Manus, the father of the abyss. Always screaming at me. Bad anger management. High Lord Wolnir has a lot of gold jewelry, very ostentatious. All of his plans sound more like schemes, but he does know the basis for Maroon 5, and they've been looking for someone with like really good hand dexterity, and he's noticed that you've got something good. So if you want... Mitha the Baneful Queen doesn't really have an understanding of personal boundaries. She's kind of like that coworker who instead of sending an email just peeks their head over the cubicle wall, except in this case that head is severed from the body and will explode. Pinwheel can summon an unlimited amount of clones. Most bosses wish they could be everywhere at once. This one can be. Slave Knight Gale came into the company with you, was a really good friend, and then he got promoted over you, and he's been a real jerk since. Aldia, Scholar of the First Sin, is constantly testing you because he sees great things in you, but dude, not everything has to be a test. This is a GameStop. Aldrich, Devourer of Gods, has a bunch of skeletons strewn about his clothes, and those are the people he ate on his way to the top, which is incredibly cutthroat, but at least he's honest about it. Pontiff Sullivan has 2 swords, a Profane Flame and a Sword of Judgment, and he hits you with both of them. He's the type of guy who sends you an NSFW link at work and then reports you for clicking on it. Dragon Slayer Ornstein and Executioner Smau get shit done. They are a power couple that isn't sanctioned by HR, they didn't fill out the paperwork, it makes everyone very uncomfortable. There was a lot of PDA, and it is weird. Now let's move on to the good category, with the old dragons. This is just Ornstein again. This dude just put on a different suit and tried to get rehired in the Ogden branch. That's not gonna fly. Y'all ready for the stinkers? You thought we had some pretty bad bosses up to this point, but we haven't even hit the depths of bad bossery. We're about to hit the Blight Town of HR. Vendrick. Dude, you gotta wear more than a loincloth to work. Chaos Witch Quelaag and Scorpioness Najka are nude from the waist up, and nude from the waist down. Y'all, we have leftover shirts from the softball game. Can you just go into the bathroom and put one of those on, please? Old Iron King is constantly working from home, and he signs all of his emails, "Sent from my hot tub." Get out of the hot tub! Ceaseless Discharge? The name alone tells me you should have taken a sick day. Osiris, the Consumed King, is always going on about his son Ocelot, showing you pictures of him and his rowing team. You know that this psych major is gonna replace you as soon as he graduates Yale. Asylum Demon, Stray Demon, and the Demon Fire Sage all have a move called Butt Slam. Looking Glass Knight reflects everyone's flaws back on them, doesn't look inward enough. Curse Rotted Greatwood, another dress code violation. Gwyn, Lord of Cinder, is kept around because he was the founder and made a lot of money on Wall Street in the 80s, but he's hollow inside. The Covetous Demon is always taking credit for the work that you're doing, and he steals your lunch from the fridge every day, even though I label it Dave. Abyss Watchers. Infighting is a very dangerous thing for a group of managers. The Crystal Sage does a little bit of work and then vanishes, and then does a little bit more work and then vanishes, and then you see them on their Instagram story at some beer garden. Sister Frida is actually a very good boss and should be up here, but unfortunately, she's the assistant to Father Ariandel, who is so incompetent he can't untie a chair from his ass. And finally, the worst boss, the Gaping Dragon. Under no circumstances should you be in a work setting and described as gaping. All that's left is the top right of this scale, the good bosses. But before we get there, there are a few bosses that don't really fit into the standard boss-employee structure, or they're basically corporations in their own right, so we'll talk about them as alternatives. The Bell and the Bell-Free Gargoyles only come in when someone else is hurting, so they're kind of like consultants. Half-Light Spear of the Church could actually be a real-life human player, and pitting employees against each other is a big no-no. The Royal Rat Vanguard is one boss rat that's surrounded by a horde of indistinguishable other rats, so it's just an episode of Undercover Boss. Afflicted Grave Robber, Ancient Soldier Varg, and Sarah the Old Explorer are a trio that, like, they're just high school friends that decided to get together and open a burger joint, and they're kind of incompetent, but you love them anyway. The Prowling Magus and Congregation is a startup because it's one charismatic weirdo who takes credit for all of the hardworking people around them. We've got some unions. A good union would be the Skeleton Lords. It's 3 lords and a bunch of minions who are recognized and working together toward the same goal. That's a good thing. A worse union is the Deacons of the Deep, where the management only comes in after 5 of their employees are killed. Finally, we have the Executioner's Chariot, whose employees are trying to unionize, but they keep getting trampled. And that leaves us with the good ones. There are only 13 of them. The Flexile Sentry, great multitasker. The Taurus Demon gives you the tools you need to succeed and encourages you to climb that ladder, so that way you can jump down and hit him on the head. Gravelord Nito has a lot of skeleton friends, a very good delegator. The Duke's dear Freya. Yeah, she's a big spider, but she's the Duke's dear Freya. The Duke loves her. When has the Duke led you astray before? Come on, man. The Duke loves her. Give her a chance.
Do it for the Duke.
Do it for the Duke. Sin, the Slumbering Dragon, and the Last Giant are slow, deliberate, and they keep on going, even though they got a big fucking spear through them. Ilana, the Squalid Queen, summons friends when things get a bit too much for her. That's good delegation and understanding your limits. The Ancient Dragon doesn't actually fight you until you fight them. You can just have a chat with this boss, and honestly, that's good enough sometimes. Great Grey Wolf Sif is a big wolf with a sword. Fuck yeah! The Nameless King and the King of the Storm. Now, when the King of the Storm takes enough damage, the Nameless King will put them out of their misery. And it's very sad, but it's also what needed to happen. That's good management. I fully expect my boss, Terra Long, to put me out of my misery when I stop being useful. The Soul of Cinder. If you kill him, you might become him, and that's a very clear path to promotion. It's not a great path to promotion, but it is a clear one. The Throne Watcher and Defender are another power couple, but they filled out the HR paperwork. And they work great together. They're super professional about it. They constantly revive the other one when they die, and that's a good boss. Also relationship goals. And finally, the best business boss in Dark Souls is the Rotten, because this company is employee owned. Every movement is made by the collective. Everyone gets a say. Now you might think you are small and insignificant and also dead, but when you smash together everyone's stinky, rotting corpse, you can move mountains together. The best boss is you. and all of your dead friends. And in the Dark Souls Corporation, that means you need a job description, so go ahead and use this handy chart to figure out your Dark Souls boss title. And that concludes our onboarding seminar. Make sure to print out your completion certificate at the end of this video so you can send it to your manager. Happy managing, and praise the sun. Under no circumstances should you be in a work setting and described as gaping.
Hey, yo, can I gape in here?
you guys might have gape. And that concludes our onboarding seminar. Make sure to celebrate the